You are listening to Naked Soul Reflections, Mindful Moments for Clothes-Free Living, with your host, Hantu Nehart.
Greetings everyone, Hantu Nehart here, and welcome to another episode of Naked Soul Reflection. This week I became present to the filters that I have when I'm interpreting things that I read, interpreting people's behaviors, how things in the world are the only way for me to perceive them is as I am. So I might think this person, she's avoiding me because she doesn't like me, or she never talks to me, but she talks to everybody else. And that might be my experience of the moment based on what's on my mind and being very focused on me and the world in terms of me. But the truth is that I don't actually follow her around throughout the day. I don't follow her. I don't know if she is only not speaking to me or if she's actually just not really speaking to much of anyone, unless absolutely necessary. Or, you know how you might walk down a road or drive down a road, and because you have a particular thing in your mind, like I'm going through here to get to the next destination, you don't necessarily take in all the information around you. Like I'm always surprised by how I go on the same walking route whenever I take my long walks, a nice long 2-hour walk, and I'll take the same route generally, but I always see something new, something I never saw before, even though I was looking at the same scenery. And so we have these filters in our mind, and they're based on so many different factors, how each of us has been cultured and socialized and groomed from when we were born. Things that have happened in our lives, experiences we've had, assumptions we've created from that. One of the things that I hear a lot of naturists and nudists say is that once you take your clothes off, like nudists and naturists don't judge people. They see everyone equally. That they're very open-minded, and in a radical step, perhaps, I actually respectfully disagree. And this based on just watching different patterns of behavior, both in person and online. Certainly there's, especially in person, there's more respect for that I've experienced in settings where it's clothing optional, where folks just really don't care what a person's body type necessarily looks like. But we still judge people. We judge their choices, who they choose to follow online. We judge people's political leanings. We judge a lot of things because we're still human beings. And, you know, taking our clothes off has so many benefits, but it doesn't take away all of the impressions that we've had on our lives. And I say that both from observing others' behavior as well as observing my behavior and my thoughts. And So I've not found it so helpful to talk about this magical, Narnia land of, judgment-free, everyone is equal, everyone is respected. It's a goal, but I don't know that we necessarily ever stop judging other people. And I was thinking, so how do I develop my sight? When I'm looking out into the world and I'm observing things and interpreting things, and I know that I'm interpreting them inaccurately, I'll think, this person's not talking to me, she's avoiding me and making it all about me. And I know that there's no truth to, that might not be true, but still I see that pattern repeat itself, how I interpret other people's behaviors and just the whole environment in terms of my own impressions and filters and issues. Maybe I have an insecurity that people just don't like me or something, and for no reason, that they just, that I'm in their way or that I'm a nuisance or something like that. But I thought, for a moment I had this thought of when I realized that, I don't see the world in this perfect way that I think I should. How do I fix it? And after spending time with a yoga teacher training group this weekend, talking about meditation and so forth, and listening to a few talks, I got present to, is it really about this lofty idea of fixing ourselves so that we never have these thoughts and impressions and assumptions and biases? Or is it more about actually just becoming present to the fact that we have them so that we can make a more informed choice about how we choose to behave in the world? So, for instance, with someone at work, if I think this person is avoiding me because I did something wrong or angry or whatever, maybe that thought process doesn't necessarily stop magically just because I, incorporate clothes-free living whenever possible, even at the office. But maybe what I become present to is a different kind of naked seeing. A naked presence and a kind of naked clarity in seeing that this pattern exists for me. So no, I don't have a magic fix, but now I know that I'm doing it. And instead of acting out of ignorance and going up to her and saying, hey, you're avoiding me, you're not talking to me, what gives? Maybe instead of jumping right into that kind of confrontational behavior, maybe I just take a pause and think, okay, this thought pattern is happening again, where I'm assuming something about this person's behavior. I'm assuming that it has everything to do with me. And then I check myself and say, okay, I've had this thought process before, so it may or may not be true. So maybe instead of going at her with the assumption that, she's acting distant towards me for some ignorant reason, maybe I don't say that. Maybe I greet her, say, good morning, hello, how are you? And I just listen. And if she does share with me that I did something to offend her, great. That's great information, and I can take the conversation from there. But maybe instead of jumping in and assuming and lashing out, I just maybe nakedly seeing this sort of dropping the shell. Perhaps is not about being this perfect thing, this perfect idea of a human, but more about becoming naked to my own experience and realizing and seeing my patterns of behavior underneath the surface. And being present to that and observing that, and then choosing to take a pause and perhaps approach the situation in a different spirit, in a different way. So I want to offer that to you this week because if I'm being perfectly candid, I've mucked up a lot of situations where I made gross, incorrect, inaccurate assumptions about people and what they were doing and why they were doing what they were doing. And these patterns of thoughts don't necessarily stop because I have a history, I've had experiences in the past, different insecurities and whatnot, so those don't magically disappear. But now I'm having these moments where I experience just being present to it and realizing it ahead of time. So I want to offer that to you this week. To first just take a pause and really get present to a pattern that you have about how you see the world and how you're interpreting things and how you react right off the bat to those things. Any assumptions you make, any sort of impulsive actions you take. Maybe taking a step back and saying, I noticed that there's this pattern. And maybe, that going one layer deep, below the surface is not about being a perfect human being, not about expecting that you'll never judge anyone ever again, but it's instead about welcoming and inviting an opportunity to get present to the fact that you have a particular pattern of thoughts. Whenever this person posts something, I get frustrated. I feel jealousy. I feel, anger. These people piss me off. These people, whatever. This person with their political. This person with, they're always talking about non-sexual nudity and they're self-righteous. Or this person is always retweeting cartoons about, pomegranates, and I don't understand why, and I get frustrated. Maybe what you notice is, maybe the goal is not to eradicate and say, I never feel anything, but rather to say, hey, I notice every time this person does this or doesn't do this, I have this like swirl of thoughts. I get angry, I get irritated, and just take a step back and pause in that moment. Because that naked moment of refraining, that naked moment of non-doing, that is one of the hardest things to hold space for and to actually commit to. Talk about going deeper than the naked body. Sitting in a naked moment of presence. That is such a rich and challenging practice. And so I want to put that on offer to you, and it's something that I'm going to do as well and continue to explore. Naked moments of non-doing, of non-reaction, and just being present to the swirl of thoughts happening in your head and the impulse you feel to lash out, and yet practicing refraining. And it could be for me, right? Another pattern could be I get stressed out, so I reach for something to eat. And maybe that is another thing where I take a pause, a moment of non-doing, and say, every time I get angry emails, I reach for something salty and fatty and crunchy, kettle chips, to chew on. And maybe I just take a pause and say, okay, I'm noticing that pattern and that impulse is arising again, and I'm just going to observe it. Before I do anything, I'm just going to observe it and be in the moment. So I want to offer that to you, this opportunity to nakedly sit in a naked moment of non-doing and just be present and observing your thoughts and what you're feeling beneath the surface. And Observe then the impact of that pause, the impact of the naked moment, the non-doing, that getting present from a lofty idea of perfection and getting grounded into a reality of what's actually happening in your heart, inside your mind, inside your body, in a given moment when you just want to lash out. And I find this to be an interesting practice because it's not a very feel-good, fluffy, comfortable practice. It can feel kind of morbid at times because there's that naked truth about what I really think. And I had that moment last week where I sat in meditation and I was clothes free while I was saying my meditation, but the thoughts that came in, I was like, maybe we just put some clothes on those thoughts because those are some very angry, mean thoughts that I'm having about some coworkers, and maybe we put some clothes on those. So it's not a feel-good practice. It's a feeling practice. Who knows what you'll feel, but to be present with that feeling and refrain from doing, just being nakedly present in the naked moment, non-doing. So give that a try this week, and definitely know that as always, I'm doing the same exact practices, and some of them are very challenging. Like the kettle chip situation, folks, that's a real thing. That's going to be a very real practice to not reach for a bag of kettle chips. And as always, my heart is with you. I wish you a great week. Namaste.